What you are about to hear might be the most consequential political earthquake of our lifetime. Right now, as you watch this video, something unprecedented is unfolding within the walls of the most powerful building on Earth. Senior White House officials are walking out the door, handing in their resignation letters, and abandoning a sinking ship while the captain refuses to let go of the wheel. This is not a movie. This is not a political thriller novel. This is happening in real time, and the implications could reshape not just American politics, but the entire global order as we know it. Before we dive deep into this explosive situation, I need you to understand something crucial. The events I am about to describe represent more than just political drama or Washington gossip. We are witnessing a stress test of American democracy unlike anything seen since the darkest days of Watergate, and some would argue this goes even further. The resignation cascade happening right now signals that the people closest to power, the individuals who see what happens behind closed doors, have reached a breaking point, and when the inner circle starts to crumble, you better believe the whole world is watching with bated breath. Let me paint the picture for you. Imagine waking up this morning, checking your phone, and seeing notification after notification about senior administration officials announcing their immediate departures. Not one, not two. We are talking about a systematic exodus of some of the most powerful figures in the executive branch. These are people who have dedicated years, sometimes decades, to public service. These are individuals who swore oaths to the Constitution and believed they were serving their country, and now, one by one, they are walking away. The question that should be burning in your mind right now is simple, but terrifying. What do they know that we do not? Stay with me here because this gets so much more intense. The resignations alone would be seismic enough, but they are not happening in a vacuum. They are happening because, according to multiple sources within the administration, the president has made it absolutely clear that stepping down is not on the table. Not now. Not ever. Despite mounting pressure from within the party, despite polls showing catastrophic approval ratings, despite what appears to be an administration in freefall, the message from the Oval Office remains unchanged. The answer is no. Absolutely not. And this defiance is precisely what has triggered the wave of departures we are now witnessing. Think about what this means for a moment. The people who work most closely with the president, the advisors who see every decision, every private meeting, every confidential document, have concluded that the situation is so untenable that their only option is to leave. This is not about policy disagreements or normal political friction. This is about something far more fundamental. This is about people of conscience reaching a limit beyond which they cannot go. And if that does not send chills down your spine, you are not paying attention. Now, let me take you back in history for a moment, because context is everything. In October 1973, during the height of the Watergate scandal, something called the Saturday Night Massacre occurred. President Richard Nixon ordered the firing of the special prosecutor investigating his administration, and in response, his Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General both resigned rather than carry out the order. That moment is seared into American political history as a turning point, the moment when even loyalists decided that their conscience outweighed their loyalty. What we are seeing today bears an eerie resemblance to that fateful night, but the scale is potentially even larger. Here is what makes the current situation so unprecedented. During Watergate, the resignations were concentrated in the Justice Department and occurred over a single dramatic evening. What is happening now involves multiple departments, multiple agencies, and a wave of departures that seems to grow by the hour. We are not talking about a surgical strike of conscience by one or two brave officials. We are talking about a hemorrhage of talent and credibility from an administration that appears to be entering its final, chaotic chapter. But wait, because here is where things get really interesting. The president's refusal to step down is not just about pride or stubbornness. According to insiders, there is a calculated strategy at play here. By refusing to leave, by daring opponents to take action, the administration is essentially calling a bluff. The Constitution provides limited mechanisms for removing a sitting president. There is impeachment, which requires action from Congress. There is the 25th Amendment, which requires the Vice President and a majority of the Cabinet to declare the President unable to discharge duties. And there is, of course, the electoral process. Each of these paths is long, complicated, and politically treacherous. And the President knows this. Let me break down why this matters in terms of global power dynamics, because this is where the story goes from domestic drama to international crisis. Right now, every foreign government on Earth is watching what is happening in Washington. They are running scenarios. They are gaming out possibilities. They are asking their intelligence services one simple question. Is America about to experience a constitutional crisis that paralyzes its government? And if the answer is yes, then every rival power, every hostile nation, every opportunistic actor sees an opening. Think about what China is calculating right now. Beijing has been waiting for moments of American weakness for decades. The Taiwan situation remains a powder keg. If Chinese leadership believes that Washington is too consumed by internal chaos to respond effectively to provocative actions, the calculus changes dramatically. The same applies to Russia, to North Korea, to Iran. When the world's sole superpower appears to be collapsing into internal dysfunction, the entire global security architecture begins to wobble. I want you to understand something that most mainstream coverage is missing. This is not just about one president or one administration. This is about the system itself being tested in ways it has never been tested before. The Founding Fathers designed a constitution with checks and balances meant to prevent any one branch from accumulating too much power. But they could not anticipate every scenario. They could not foresee a situation where a president might simply refuse to accept legitimate constraints on power while the political system around him fragments. Now, let me tell you about the specific resignations that have occurred, because the details are crucial. First, we have seen departures from the National Security Council, which is the nerve center of American foreign policy and national security decision-making. When people at that level walk away, it means they no longer trust the judgment of their commander-in-chief on matters of life and death. These are individuals who handle the most sensitive secrets in the world, who participate in decisions about military action, intelligence operations, and nuclear policy. For them to leave is not a casual career choice. It is a statement of profound alarm. Second, we have witnessed resignations from the Domestic Policy Council, signaling that the dysfunction extends beyond foreign affairs into the basic functioning of government. Economic policy, healthcare, education, immigration, all of these areas are now operating with leadership vacuums. The machinery of government is grinding to a halt precisely when the country needs steady hands most. Third, and perhaps most significantly, we are seeing departures from the White House counsel's office. These are the lawyers whose job is to keep the president on the right side of the law, to provide legal guidance on everything from executive orders to pardons to the limits of presidential power. When the president's own lawyers start heading for the exits, it sends an unmistakable signal that legal lines are being crossed or are about to be crossed. Here is something most people do not realize about how White House resignations work. These are not snap decisions. Senior officials do not just wake up one morning and decide to quit. These departures represent weeks, sometimes months, of internal struggle. They represent countless meetings where concerns were raised and dismissed. They represent the exhaustion of every possible avenue for change from within. By the time someone actually submits their resignation letter, they have already gone through a painful process of realizing that their presence is no longer making a positive difference. The psychological dimension of this exodus cannot be overstated. Many of these officials took their jobs believing they could serve as guardrails, as the adults in the room who would prevent the worst impulses from becoming policy. This is a common justification for remaining in difficult administrations, but there comes a point when the guardrails realize they are not preventing anything, that the train is going where it wants to go regardless of their efforts. That realization is what we are seeing manifest in these resignations. Let me tell you what happens next, because the implications are staggering. When senior officials resign en masse, the people who replace them are inevitably less experienced, less qualified, and often more willing to carry out questionable orders without pushback. This is how institutions decay. The first wave of departures removes the people with the strongest principles and the most to lose reputationally. The second wave removes those who held on hoping things would improve. What remains is often a skeleton crew of loyalists and opportunists who prioritize their own positions over the proper functioning of government. We have seen this pattern before in history, and it never ends well. Think about the final years of the Nixon administration, when the president became increasingly isolated and paranoid, surrounding himself with a shrinking circle of true believers while the rats fled the sinking ship. Think about the final phases of authoritarian regimes throughout history, when the leader's grip on reality becomes increasingly tenuous even as their grip on power tightens. The psychology is always the same. As the circle shrinks, the echo chamber intensifies, and the leader becomes more convinced of their own righteousness, precisely when they should be questioning everything. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking that this is just politics as usual, that administrations always have turnover, that resignations happen all the time. And you are right that personnel changes are normal. But what is happening now is not normal by any measure. The speed, the scale, and most importantly, the stated reasons for these departures put them in an entirely different category. We are not seeing people leaving for better opportunities or because they disagree on tax policy. We are seeing people leave because they believe fundamental norms are being violated. Here is a detail that should keep you up at night. Some of the officials who have resigned are now reportedly in communication with congressional investigators. They are preparing to share what they know about decision-making inside the White House. They are documenting what they witnessed. They are preserving evidence. This suggests that the departures are not just about personal conscience, but about a belief that accountability is coming and that the historical record needs to be set straight. The financial markets are watching all of this with extreme concern, and for good reason. Political stability is the bedrock of economic confidence. When investors lose faith in the predictability of government policy, when they cannot forecast what rules will apply tomorrow, capital becomes skittish. We have already seen increased volatility in the markets, with defensive sectors outperforming while more speculative investments falter. If this crisis deepens, we could see significant capital flight as investors seek safer harbors for their money. Foreign exchange markets are particularly sensitive to this kind of political uncertainty. The dollar's status as the world's reserve currency depends partly on confidence in American institutional stability. A constitutional crisis of the magnitude we may be witnessing would raise fundamental questions about that stability. Already, we are seeing movements in currency markets that suggest smart money is hedging against a worst-case scenario. Let me tell you something about how this connects to the global power shifts we have been tracking on this channel. For decades, American dominance has rested on three pillars: military supremacy, economic might, and institutional credibility. The first two remain largely intact despite challenges. But institutional credibility, the belief that America operates according to rules, norms, and democratic principles, is precisely what is being tested right now. And if that pillar cracks, the other two begin to wobble as well. Think about it from the perspective of an ally like Japan or Germany or South Korea. These nations have built their entire security architecture around American reliability. They have made decisions about their own military spending, nuclear policy, and diplomatic orientation based on the assumption that the United States would be there when needed. A constitutional crisis that paralyzes Washington calls all of that into question. Already, we are hearing from diplomatic sources that allies are having difficult conversations about contingency planning in ways they have not had to consider since the end of the Cold War. Now, here is where I need to get very serious with you, because the next few weeks and months will be decisive. The president's refusal to step down creates a dangerous standoff. On one side, you have a president who retains all the formal powers of the office, including command of the military and control of the executive branch. On the other side, you have a growing coalition of former officials, concerned legislators, and civil society voices calling for change. Neither side has a clear path to victory, which is precisely why the situation is so volatile. The 25th Amendment, which some have suggested as a possible remedy, was designed for situations where the president is physically or mentally incapacitated. It was not really designed for situations where the president is actively resisting removal while maintaining the support of enough loyalists to prevent cabinet action. For the amendment to be invoked, the vice president would have to be willing to lead the effort, and there is no indication that will happen. The political risks of turning against a sitting president of your own party are enormous, and most vice presidents have calculated that patience is the safer course. Impeachment remains theoretically possible, but faces similar obstacles. The House of Representatives would need to approve articles of impeachment by majority vote, and then the Senate would need to convict by a two-thirds majority. In the current political environment, achieving that supermajority would require a significant number of the president's own party to vote against him. While not impossible, this would require a dramatic shift in political calculations that has not yet occurred. What we are left with is an uncomfortable limbo, a situation where the president retains power but has lost the moral authority and administrative capacity to govern effectively. This is arguably worse than a clean break either way. A functioning administration with broad support can accomplish things. A clean transition to new leadership can restore stability and confidence. But a zombie administration, one that technically exists but cannot actually govern, creates the worst of all worlds. Let me share with you what former officials are saying privately, because their perspectives are illuminating. Many describe a White House where normal processes have broken down completely. Meetings that should happen do not. Decisions that should be made are delayed endlessly. Information flows that should reach the Oval Office get blocked or distorted. The result is a kind of organizational paralysis, where the president issues directives that cannot be implemented because the mechanisms for implementation no longer function properly. This connects to something we have discussed before on this channel about how empires and great powers decline. It rarely happens through dramatic military defeat or overnight collapse. More often, it happens through gradual institutional decay, through the accumulation of small dysfunctions that eventually reach critical mass. The Roman Empire did not fall in a day. It eroded over centuries as the quality of its leadership declined, as the loyalty of its armies became uncertain, as the administrative machinery that had made Rome great slowly rusted from within. We may be watching a similar process unfold in real time, accelerated to an almost impossibly compressed timeline. The international dimensions of this crisis deserve more attention than they are getting. While American media focuses on the domestic political drama, foreign capitals are making strategic calculations. China's leadership is meeting to assess opportunities and risks. Russia is evaluating options in Ukraine and elsewhere. Middle Eastern powers are reconsidering their alignment strategies. The entire post-World War II international order, which has been guaranteed by American power and commitment, faces a moment of unprecedented uncertainty. Here is what I want you to take away from this analysis. We are living through a historical moment that will be studied by future generations. The outcome is not yet determined. The choices made in the coming weeks by key actors, including members of Congress, military leaders, state governors, and ordinary citizens, will shape the trajectory of American democracy for decades to come. This is not hyperbole. This is the reality of the situation we face. I want to leave you with a thought that has been on my mind throughout this crisis. Institutions are ultimately just agreements between people. They are habits of behavior, shared expectations, accumulated trust built over generations. The Constitution is not a magic document that enforces itself. It works only because enough people believe in it and are willing to act in accordance with its principles. What we are witnessing is a test of whether that collective belief is strong enough to survive a determined challenge. Throughout American history, there have been moments when the system bent almost to the breaking point. The Civil War was the most dramatic example, but there have been others. The Great Depression tested faith in capitalism and democracy simultaneously. The Civil Rights era exposed the gap between American ideals and American reality. Watergate revealed the potential for abuse at the highest levels. Each time, the system adapted, reformed, and emerged arguably stronger. But nothing is guaranteed. History is full of examples of democratic systems that failed, that gave way to authoritarianism or chaos, because the people and institutions that should have defended them failed to do so. The officials who are resigning, whatever you think of their politics or their previous decisions, are making a statement about where their lines are. They are saying that there are things they will not do, norms they will not violate, orders they will not follow. In a sense, they are vindicating the system by demonstrating that it still contains people of conscience. But their departure also means the system is losing its defenders from within, leaving those who remain with fewer internal checks on their behavior. As I wrap up this analysis, I want to ask you to do something. Share this video with someone who needs to understand what is happening. These are times when informed citizenship is more important than ever. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep getting updates as this crisis unfolds. And leave a comment below telling me what you think happens next. I read every comment, and your perspectives help shape our coverage. The story is not over. In many ways, it is just beginning. The president refuses to step down. The officials are leaving. The world is watching. What happens next will determine whether American democracy proves resilient enough to survive its greatest modern test or whether we are witnessing the beginning of something far darker. Stay tuned, stay informed, stay engaged, because the future of global power may depend on what happens in the coming days. Thank you for watching until the end. This has been one of the most important analyses I have ever produced, and I appreciate each and every one of you who stayed with me through this deep dive. Like this video if you found it valuable. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you do not miss any updates as this story develops. And I will see you in the next video, where we will continue to track the collapse and reconstruction of the world order in real time. Until then, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and never stop questioning what you are told. The truth is out there, but you have to work to find it.